I'm easing back into things after taking the month of August off, and today I'm sharing 6 highlights from my summer sabbatical. This is for you if you're wanting to plan some more extended time away from your work or your business. If you feel like you're entering into the land of perimenopause, and you'll understand what I mean deeper into the episode, and if taking more space to rest and receive feels like just the medicine you need. Welcome to Herself, a space for women to have deep conversations about the intersection between spiritual entrepreneurship and fulfilling your potential, so you can become the woman you truly are in every area of your life. After being in business for over 2 decades, I've learned, as you likely have too, that as you grow your business grows you in unexpected, often challenging, yet miraculous ways. Here, we'll talk about how to get out of your own way so you can grow a business that's abundant and sustainable while allowing you to be a force for good in the world. I'll give you simple, actionable strategies as well as wisdom and inspiration to help you root into your wholeness, lead from your values, and work in ways that feel deeply aligned so you can bring your true self into the world through your business and in every area of your life. Hello, beautiful women. Welcome back. And to those of you who are new to this community, welcome for the first time or welcome for one of your first times. And welcome back to me because this is my first day back at work after taking the month of August off. I took just over 4 weeks, about 4.5 weeks off from August 1st until today when I'm recording this, which is September 3rd. And this was my second year of doing this, of taking the whole month of August off. And while I have closed my business for the last 2 months of August, for many years, I have held the intention for even longer than that to take the whole month of August off, inspired by European culture, which I just feel is a lot saner than US culture here in that regard of just really taking space in the summer to be spacious, to not be working, to enjoy. And I have also for a long time just really pined after having saner rhythms in general in our world. My first book, The Way of the Happy Woman, was very much about this. And I take Sunday Sabbaths as much as I can, where I don't schedule anything on Sundays. I try to stay offline on Sundays. And I just often feel like I want the world to be doing more of this too, so we can have more quiet times together as a culture. I feel like it's so important for our health, for our sanity, our creativity, just overall sense of joy. And this past year, I didn't want to do a ton of travel during my time off after how full the previous year had been. I wanted more unstructured time at home with some short trips. So I did a short trip down to Telluride in Colorado. I'd never been there before, even though I have lived in Colorado for 16 years at this point. Telluride's a bit of a longer drive. It's a little bit over 6 hours. And it's not that easy to get to, but I'm really glad that we went. It was just really, the nature was really stunning. And so enjoyed some days down in Telluride. And now I'm out in Santa Barbara, and I'll say more about that in a little bit. And I'll have about 2 weeks. I've been here for about a week, and I have about another week until heading home. So there have been doses of being in beautiful environments without extensive flights and time changes, which I, again, just really didn't want during this time off. So while I love my work, I also love having it be one piece of a larger, more integrated life. And taking sabbaticals like this really helps me to feel that more. So today, the day after Labor Day here in the US, it has that first day of school feeling. If any of you, I'm sure we all remember that feeling, and some of you with your own children, you're in the thick of it yourselves. So there's the excitement to dive back in, to connect with my students, my clients, my team members, to work on new projects that I have coming up this fall. And there's also trepidation. I had some insights over this past month, which I'm going to be sharing more about, And I know that there are some shifts that I need and want to make, and I'm wondering what will that be like? So again, I'm taking things slowly, and I wanted to share with you some of the highlights from this past month. So the first highlight was I got a lot of couch time in. And couch time looks exactly like it sounds. It's just I spent a lot of time on my couch in our living room, which is not usual for me. And I don't have anything against it, but my life has been really full, especially over this past year. And so, again, I knew I needed a lot of rest and unstructured time in the month of August. Definitely no Zoom meetings. I needed a landing pad after my book launch and after a year of doing a big pivot in my business and really navigating my father's rapid health decline with his dementia. So my system was working with a fair amount of stress over the past year. And these early days, really like the first week, maybe even 2 weeks, I stayed in my pajamas a lot of the time and I just rested on the couch. And that first week, especially, maybe the first couple weeks, I loved watching the Olympics. I hadn't done that in many, many years, even though I always love watching the Olympics. And I just find it so enjoyable. I'm not usually a sports person. And one of the things that I have always loved about the Olympics is the opportunity to get to know the stories and the journeys of different athletes, to really feel that's the sense of rooting for them, and then just being in awe of that level of dedication and mastery. So I really, really enjoyed that. And also some time on the couch reading, journaling, napping, just chilling out. And later in the month, watching the DNC, the Democratic National Convention here in the US. I especially love the speeches by Michelle Obama, Oprah, and Kamala Harris. So overall, this aspect of my time off was just really letting myself be lazy. And I don't say lazy in a derogatory way. I think we all need to do this more often than we do. And, I thought that I would schedule more things with friends and more summer outings, and which I did do those things, which I'll share more about. But once my sabbatical started, I realized that this was really what I needed the most of. And I also thought that I'd schedule more sessions with my mentors, but I really felt like I needed a lot of quiet time with myself to go deep within myself. And instead of investing in those things, I opted to invest in having more massages. And it was my body that really needed the most support. So all of that just felt really, really good and right. So the second highlight from my time off was I adjusted my morning practice and my diet a bit. So here I am 46. I'm turning 47 in a couple of months. And I have been learning a lot through different podcasts and different books, and also my own fiance, who's been just talking about this with me more, that I needed to up my protein intake. I have become mostly plant-based in recent years. I've gone through different phases of this. And earlier in my life, in my adulthood, I was vegetarian. In my 30s, I started eating more animal protein again. And in recent years, I've started to not feel drawn to animal protein and just being more plant-based. But I've just been realized I'm just not getting enough protein, and that I also needed to add in more strength training to build up muscle. It's said that we need at least 1 gram of protein for every pound that we weigh. And that's a lot of protein. That's a lot more protein than I was eating. I used to go to the gym a lot and lift weights, but I moved away from that in the past several years just because my body felt like it needed gentler forms of movement. And at this age, I am in perimenopause, which I'm going to share more about later today. So there's more rapid muscle loss and bone degeneration. And to counter that, we need to be lifting weights and eating more protein. So over this past month, I had more space to experiment with my diet and to see what would it be like to bring in different forms of protein, different amounts of protein. I added some strength training in a more consistent way to my morning routine after my yoga and meditation. And I definitely feel like I developed more muscle this past year, and I definitely feel stronger. So I feel more anchored in this new routine now that I'm diving back into work, and I look forward to continuing with it from here. I will likely add in more things, like I want to start going to the gym a couple of days a week to lift weights, but I feel like what I have right now feels like a good start. And I also want to preface by saying that my body was just kind of talking to me and saying, "Okay, we need to shake things up a little bit. We need something different." And again, more on that in some moments. So, the third highlight of my time off was wedding planning, which was a lot of fun. I got engaged in May, and at that time we started doing some wedding planning, but we got engaged literally 3 days before my book launched. So it was just like, okay, we need to put a pin in the wedding planning because there's a lot going on. Like I really want to do this, but I just can't do it right now. And so I knew I wanted to return to it in August when I had time off. One of the big things was going wedding dress shopping, and I did have a sense of the designer I wanted to zero in on. And once we got engaged, I started just looking at her more in depth online. I saw one of her dresses that I fell in love with. And in August, I was able to go into Denver and to try it on. And I also tried about a dozen other dresses on or more, but I really confirmed that that was the one. And I really love it. It was fun to try a lot of different styles on because there are so many different looks and flavors out there. There were other dresses that I definitely liked a lot. I kind of wish I could wear several, but I know that's just not possible. But this one feels the most unique. It feels like the most me. And I feel grateful that I had time to dive into that. And like I said at the start, I'm out in Santa Barbara now. Many of you know I lived here for a couple of years, and my fiance, Chris, also lived here in the past, and we have traveled here many times together over the past 4 years that we've been together. And we both agreed that we wanted to have a small destination wedding here next summer. So on this trip, we decided on our venue and our date and some of the other key factors like the food we're going to have, the guest list, our officiant. So things are really starting to come together with that. So I can, again, put that more on the back burner as I'm diving back into work projects this fall. But like my wedding dress, it all feels really aligned for both of us. And we're also starting to do some planning for our honeymoon as well. We're intending that both our wedding and our honeymoon will be next August during my sabbatical next year. The fourth highlight, and this might sound strange to you, but I just got more proactive with my cancer screenings. And during my time off, I'm able to have more time and space for healthcare appointments and researching various things. So I had my first colonoscopy. Maybe this is TMI, but I want to really give a PSA here for cancer screenings. And here in the US, they moved the recommended date for your first colonoscopy from 50 to 45. So I'm about a year late, but I'm glad that I did it. And I'm glad that it's over. I'm happy to say all is clear. But yeah, that was a bit of an adventure. And those of you who've been through that, you know what I'm talking about. I was also working with my doctor to get a breast ultrasound ordered. That took quite a bit of back and forth, but I finally got it ordered. This earlier in the summer, I had heard on We Can Do Hard Things podcast with Amanda Doyle, who's Glennon Doyle's sister, that she had dense breast tissue, and she also had a family history of cancer. And she had learned that mammograms are not enough if you have breast dense tissue, that you can still have breast cancer if you get a clear mammogram and you have dense breast tissue. So she got an additional ultrasound and discovered that she, in fact, had breast cancer. And so she was able to get on it early. And I also saw earlier this summer a PSA from Katie Couric saying the same thing about one of her friends who had dense breast tissue, who had mammograms that all came back clear and then got an ultrasound and found out that she had breast cancer. So I have dense breast tissue and I have a family history of cancer. And while I do get a mammogram every year and have since I was 40, I realize that that isn't enough. So I'm getting my first breast ultrasound later this month. And this is just an encouragement. I'm not a doctor and you don't need to follow my advice, but you can do your own research. And just if you have dense breast tissue, this may be something that you want to look into. But overall, just to get whatever cancer screenings you have available to you, especially when we get to 40 plus. Also, to do annual skin checks with your dermatologist. I get those twice a year because I've had a lot of atypical moles removed. And of course, your pap smears. I get those annually rather than, I think now it's recommended every 3 years. Since when I was younger, I had cervical dysplasia. So if they're available, why not just get it more often? So the fifth highlight was really prioritizing pleasure. And so here in Santa Barbara, that has looked like beach days. In Boulder, it looked like some pool days. In both places, it's looked like gathering with friends for meals or going for hikes or walks with friends, eating meals outside on our deck at home or out on the patio here, and even just going for solo hikes and walks out in nature. And I also, just little things like I got some new skincare products that feel really pleasurable and feminine to put on each day. So I'm just looking at like what are some like little moments where I can feel that pleasure, where I can feel that femininity, and just weave that more into my daily life. And then the sixth highlight, which I have hinted at a bit, last but not least, is I feel like the big headline from this month off was that I really presenced that I am in perimenopause. So by the end of the month, just some big light bulbs went off. And I realized that while I took a whole month off and rested a lot and really prioritized sleep, I still do not feel as recovered as I normally do. And that was a big aha for me to realize like, oh, I don't feel like myself. Something is different. My baseline has shifted. And I don't know if I had taken this month off, if I would have realized, I don't think I would have realized it in this way. So I really had more space to piece together different symptoms that have surfaced for me over, I'd say, the past year or even two, and that have surfaced more prominently in the past several months. So I realized that I'm in a more heightened state of perimenopause. And while I've been preparing for this in many ways, I just realized, oh, this is here. This is really happening. And it's said that perimenopause lasts for 10 to 12 years and it has three main phases. I think I've been in phase one for several years, maybe even since my early 40s, even especially after I did a couple of rounds of IVF. And my body really shifted after that and never really fully went back to how it was prior to that. So I think that that was a shift. And then I feel like I've shifted into the second phase this past year. And again, this awareness came from both having this past month off and also serendipitously or synchronistically having a conversation with a friend of mine who is further along in her perimenopausal journey, and just getting more information from her, and then kind of like just pieces just started falling into place in my own mind. So when I removed other variables, like just different stressors from work, I could really feel what was happening underneath everything. And so I've started educating myself a lot more. I'm reading a lot of books about it, listening to podcasts, talking to friends who are older than me, researching practitioners to potentially work with to get more support. And I feel sad that this information isn't more widely discussed. And I was talking with one of my friends, and she was saying, yeah, I feel like it's really Gen X, which I'm in Gen X, is going to be like the generation of women that really brings all this information more to the light so that future generations have it more easily and readily. So there's some sadness about it, but I also feel grateful that there is so much more available on this topic now than there was even just 5 to 10 years ago. And the bottom line is I'm realizing that things need to shift. I'm entering a new season of life. My body is talking to me. My soul is talking to me, and things need to shift. And so again, I was already sensing that by, like I said earlier, adding more protein, lifting weights, prioritizing sleep even more. And now I'm also researching HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and just knowing that I need to be even more diligent about taking space, simplifying, resting now that I'm back at work, which was already an intention that I had before this came to light, but it just, I don't know, emphasizes that a lot more. So I feel excited about this shift and kind of this new frontier that I feel like I'm at in my life and in my womanhood. And there's also, like I said earlier, there's also some trepidation, like, what is this going to be like? But my primary intention is for this to be the best season of my life yet, to be really fully in my power, internally and externally. And I'll likely be in this state for several years. And I'm accepting that as well and trying to get in front of it. And even though I was seeing this more out in a distance, like my early 50s, as that's when my mom went through menopause. Menopause, the definition is that you haven't got a menstrual cycle for at least 12 months. I also know that perimenopause, like I've been saying, can last for many years. And from what I've been reading, it's better to get ahead of it and to get started with all of this sooner rather than later. So this is definitely one of my top priorities right now. And I imagine I'll have more to say about this as I get deeper into it. So these are the broad strokes of my time away. And one of the things I was struck by, especially at the start of the month, was how generous it felt to give this time to myself. It felt like a really, really kind gift. And I give a lot in my work, which I love. Service is really important to me. And as I get older, I'm getting much better at receiving and creating more space to receive, because it is so important to strike a balance between giving and receiving, especially as we get older. And especially as we as women, our bodies, our souls, our psyches need more and more space. One of my mentors that I talked to recently shared that during perimenopause, like puberty, there's so much internal stimuli, there's so much happening internally that we need to create more space externally to reduce external stimulation as much as we can. And that's not an easy thing to do as an entrepreneur. And it's not an easy thing to do in the world right now in general. So again, I'm moving back into things slowly and consciously, one step at a time. One other thing that I was struck by, which I also remember from childhood when we had summer vacations, when we were off from school, is that the first days and even the first week moves more slowly. And there's this feeling of like, oh, it's only been 3 days and I still have another month, or, oh, it's only been a week and I still have almost 4 more weeks. And then after that point, it feels like things just accelerate and there's a way of dropping more into a new rhythm. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm back at work now. So it's this feeling of like time is really slow. And then somehow it's just the end and back to school, back to work. So whatever this past month has felt like or looked like for you, I am grateful to be here together again and to journey through the close of this year together and beyond. And I look forward to seeing you back here next week. Thank you for joining me today. And remember, change doesn't come from listening alone. I invite you to commit to taking one small or large courageous action after today's conversation. One step you can take if you haven't already is to sign up for my Sunday journal. It's a weekly newsletter filled with inspiration and reflections about the intersection between spiritual entrepreneurship and fulfilling your potential to help you become the woman you truly are in every area of your life. You can subscribe at programs-sarahavonstover.com/journal. And if you found this podcast valuable, please share it with the women in your world. Also, I'd be very grateful if you'd leave a review. It helps others find resources like this, and I'd love to hear what's coming alive for you after listening today. Above all, keep going, and never forget the unique offerings you and your true self bring to the world. Until next time, I'm sending you my heartfelt support.